The buildings that had so much defined the New York skyline for a generation and taken 6 years to build were gone in less than 2 hours.
And I said, there's no way. I said, those are steel structures. I said, that's furniture and paper and carpeting and draperies and things like that are burning.
So we get further and further away from 9/11, we forget, don't we?
Rick Sanchez has been there throughout this morning for us. Rick, tell us where you are and what the latest is.
Well, I'm in that area. If you're familiar with this area, where West Broadway and Hudson come together, right at Chambers. That would put us about a block and a half away from the site of where the explosion was. That area has just been evacuated because police have found what they described as a suspicious device. And they fear that it might be something that could lead to another explosion. Obviously, there's a real sense of caution here on the part of police. I spoke with some police officials moments ago, Chris, and they told me that they have reason to believe that one of the explosions at the World Trade Center, aside from the ones that may have been caused by the impact of the plane with the building, may have been caused by a van that was parked in the building that may have had some type of explosive device in it. So their fear is that there may have been explosive device planted either in the building or in the adjacent area, and that's why they're being so cautious.
7 burned until late afternoon, allowing occupants to evacuate to safety.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. I said, we've had such terrible loss of life. The smartest thing to do is pull. And they made that decision to pull. And then we watched the building collapse.
We're going to show you a videotape of the collapse of the cell. Describe that. Can I go to videotape the collapse of this building? It's amazing. Amazing, incredible, pick your word. For the third time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen from Mexican television. The building was deliberately destroyed by world-class dynamite that knocked it down.
Where the fuck did we do? We made it outside, we made it about a block.
We made it at least 2 blocks, and we started running. Floor by floor, instead of popping out.
It was like, if they had detonated.
Detonated.
Take down a building.
All the way down. I was watching it and running. Just ran up, and then you just sort of this cloud of shit chasing you down. Couldn't run up West Street. I'm running. I jumped behind a battalion car. I hit up the car. I was waiting to die.
But as soon as I got outside, I heard a second explosion and another rumble and more smoke and more dust. I ran inside the buildings, the chandelier shook, and again, black smoke filled the air. Within another 5 minutes, we were covered again with more silk and more dust. And then a fire marshal came in and said we had to leave because if there was a third explosion, the building might not last.
The chief inspector of the fire department of New York City told me he received word the possibility of a secondary device. That is another bomb going off. He tried to get his men out as quickly as he could, but he said that there was another explosion which took place. And according to his theory, he thinks that there were actually devices that were planted in the building.
45 minutes into the taping that we were doing, there was an explosion that was way up where the fire was, and the whole building at that point bellied out in flames, and everybody ran.
And then all of a sudden it started like it sounded like gunfire. You know, bang, 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 bang. And then all of a sudden 3 big explosions. I was about 5 blocks away when I heard explosions. 3 thuds and turned around to see the building we just got out of. Antenna tipped over and falling on itself.
We could prove that your story is false. And I don't use the word prove lightly. But when you have people coming up with a story that violates the laws of physics, not just once but repeatedly, you can say, okay, that story's wrong, and what we have to do now is hope that the people of the world have at least enough grasp of science to see what we want to explain, to understand what we want to explain here. The idea that these buildings came down because of explosions, and even more specifically because of explosives planted in the building, was an idea found all over the place on 9/11. On the scene by eyewitnesses, even on television, on the radio, in the paper. Very common. And it's important that we know that. It changes our perspective on this. So here's my first video. The reporter here is N.J. Burkett, and he's working for ABC News 7, and he's standing very near the towers.
Take two. Take two and 2, 1. This is as close as we can get to the base of the World Trade Center. You can see the firemen assembled here, the police officers, FBI agents. The towers, a huge explosion now waiting to play on all of us.
So this man had to pick up, he and his companion had to pick up the camera and run for their lives. And I don't see any evidence that Mr. Burkett had a particular conspiratorial frame of mind. And he certainly didn't come around after the event. This is his spontaneous judgment, standing in a place of great danger. He says, before the material even hits the ground, a huge explosion now, raining debris on all of us. We better get out of the way. And he runs. And just so you know, he also had to run for his life when the North Tower came down a little bit later. And he described that as a blast. So here we have some people who are off screen in, I assume, their apartment or condo in New York City, watching and filming, in this case, the North Tower in the distance, and we can hear them talking in the background. And it's particularly the man who talks here that I want you to listen to. I assume it's Matthew Shapoff.
I had my shoes on and I was about to go out the door. I would have been walking around when this happened. Oh my God! That was a bomb that did that.
Oh God, look at that!
That was a fucking bomb that did that. There's no goddamn way that could have happened.
Again, this gentleman didn't come along after the scene. He made his judgment as the North Tower came down, and he made it just as the debris was beginning to hit the ground. That was a bomb that did that, he said. Now, by the way, I just want to remind you what I'm trying to prove here. I'm not using Shapoff's evidence to argue that controlled demolition took place. I'm not even at that stage of the talk yet. I'm simply making a historic point about history, that there were people on that day who made the spontaneous judgment that these buildings exploded.
You want to call your mother or something?
We just heard one more explosion. That's about the fourth one we've heard.
The two buildings then exploded. They were leveled.
But there was another explosion on the far side of one of the buildings from where we're standing. The reverberation and another explosion on the right-hand side. There seemed to be another explosion, and also on the right-hand side. There was also another explosion. We're not sure if that was extra reverberation from what happened at the World Trade Center, or if that was an added explosion.
All of a sudden, there was a roll, an explosion, and we could see coming at us a ball of flame stories high.
It was blown up. The World Financial Center was blown up.
It was an explosion. It was in the lobby, and the third explosion, the whole lobby collapsed on us.
Is that a secondary explosion?
Yes, it was.
That was the
Yeah, definitely a secondary explosion. Because we was inside waiting to go upstairs, and on the way upstairs, the whole fucking plane blew. It was like 3 explosions after that. We came in after the fire. We came when the fire was going on already. We was in the staging area inside the building, waiting to go upstairs. Then it exploded. Then the whole lobby collapsed on the lobby inside.
We watched the first explosion. People don't understand. There may be more. Any one of these fucking buildings can blow up. This ain't done yet.
You're in the building trying to help people, and it's exploding on you inside the building. So I don't think it could get any worse than this.
We were in the lobby, gathering to go up and start doing a search on the upper floors. As we were getting our gear on and making our way to the stairway, there was a heavy-duty explosion.
Yeah, that did look like there was an explosion and it went down.
It went up.
There was an explosion. We're on the support floor, which is a basement. Guy came in running. All his skin was out of his body.
Another explosion at World Trade.
It looked like there was a whole bunch of explosions at the bottom, like windows and shit fell out, and the top fell to the right, and the bottom fell to the left.
Tower 1 just came down, the whole side of it just collapsed, like it was a bomb inside of it. This whole thing just imploded, like just came down.
I don't know whether it's another explosion or a portion of the building falling away, but something major just happened at that building.
We just witnessed some kind of secondary follow-up explosion on the World Trade Center number 2, the one that is on the south that is difficult to make out through the debris and smoke. The second tower, the only one that was standing, tower number 1, just we saw some kind of explosion, a lot of smoke come out of the top of the tower, and then it collapsed down onto the streets below.
There has just been a huge explosion. We can see a billowing smoke rising.
My next example is from firefighter Christopher Fenyo, and this is taken from the FDNY oral histories. And he's talking about a period after the South Tower came down, that was the first tower to come down, and before the North Tower came down. So sometime roughly between 10 and 10:30 in the morning, it turns out there was a debate happening among firefighters at the scene. Quote, "At that point, a debate began to rage because the perception was that the building looked like it had been taken out with charges." In other words, not merely that it came down because of explosions in some general sense, but that the building had been rigged for demolition. They were debating that before 10:30 in the morning on 9/11.
We made it outside. We made it about a block.
We made it at least 2 blocks, and we started running. Floor by floor, instead of popping out.
It was as if they had detonated.
Yeah,
as if they were planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
All the way down. I was watching it and running.
All of a sudden, I looked up, and about 20 stories below, at least that's what it looked like to me, about 75 flights up, below the fire, I saw from the corner, boom, 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 boom. Just like 20 straight hits, just went down, and then I just saw the whole building just went, and as the bombs were going, people just started running, and I sat there and watched a few of them explode, and then I just turned around, and I just started running for my life, because at that point, the World Trade Center was coming right down, right above us.
This is very good eyewitness testimony. This, as far as I can tell, this footage is entirely independent from the Nade brothers film. That means this gentleman, Paul Lemos, did not see the firefighters, and they did not see him. And here they are independently on the day itself, and we know it's the day itself. We can see Building 7 in the background during Paul Lemos' testimony. The same gesture. Boom, 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 boom. Here's what he says. And by the way, this man doesn't guard himself. The firefighters don't go so far as to say they were explosions. They just say they looked like them. He doesn't guard himself. All of a sudden, I looked up, and about 20 stories below the fire, I saw from the corner, he's talking about the North Tower, the same building that the 2 firefighters were talking about. I saw from the corner, boom, 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 just like 20 straight hits, just went down. And then I just saw the whole building just went phew. And as the bombs were going, people just started running. And I sat there and watched a few of them explode. And then I just turned around and I just started running for my life, because at that point the World Trade Center was coming right down.
The fire trucks that were there originally were on fire. Windows were blown out. Cars were exploding. There's big holes in the side of buildings that the explosion fired out to. They told me afterwards it wasn't explosions. I was talking to one of the architects that they pulled in, because he was talking to me about it. He said, "What did you see?" I said, "I saw the fire, and when I looked up, I saw around the 70, because the fire was on the 96th floor. So I looked down, and it happened probably 70, 75, I can't be specific. I looked, and I could see the corner, and it just started going pop. It just started going boom, 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 boom. And he goes, "How fast?" I go, "Like firecrackers."
Now, there's no evidence that Paul Lemos was ready to give up what he believed he thought he saw. But already on 9/11, on the scene, he's being told what he didn't perceive. There is no way at that point that anyone could have claimed to know scientifically that this man had not perceived explosions. Hadn't studied the rubble, the physical residue, hadn't done a comprehensive study of video or still footage, hadn't done a comprehensive investigation of eyewitnesses. How on earth could he make that judgment? But there's more. He's interfering with a criminal investigation. I don't care whether you look at this as a homicide investigation or a fire investigation or a bombing investigation. In all three cases, it's clear that eyewitness testimony is important and that you go to the scene and you gather it. You don't tell eyewitnesses what they did and didn't perceive. This eyewitness evidence has been ignored or suppressed by the 9/11 Commission and the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And I can be fairly brief here, because if we ask how many references there are to eyewitness statements about explosions in the towers in the 585 pages of the 9/11 Commission, we find that there is one sentence fragment. They are discussing firefighters who were in the North Tower when the South Tower came down, and this is what they say. Those firefighters not standing near windows facing south had no way of knowing that the South Tower had collapsed. Many surmised that a bomb had exploded. That's it, in 585 pages. This implies that eyewitnesses who thought there were explosions were in the North Tower at the time the South Tower came down. In fact, most of them weren't. It also implies that they made a mistake. And they made that mistake because they had an impeded view. They weren't near a window. They couldn't see what was going on. This is grotesquely misleading. Many eyewitnesses were looking directly at the towers. And I've already showed you examples. So whether it's deliberate or not, this is an extremely inadequate and misleading way of dealing with this important testimony. If we ask about the National Institute of Standards and Technology now, which was given the specific job of figuring out why these buildings collapsed, how many references are there to eyewitnesses to explosions in the towers in the 295 pages of the final report? 0. Not one. Now, you need to know that the 9/11 Commission and NIST had access to the same material that I have access to. And yet they both miss my 156 eyewitnesses to explosions, not to mention many other eyewitnesses that are not in my list. Whether that's deliberate suppression of evidence, which would be a crime, or whether it's simply massive incompetence, does not concern me today, because either way, we have an investigation that is thoroughly inadequate, and that's why we need a new one.
My son Bobby, almost 10 years ago, died right here at the site of the North Tower. We came up to New York and we did find his body. We took Bobby home that week and buried him a week later on Tuesday the 18th. For years and years, I've been trying to find out what happened that day. A few years ago, I finally ran into the doctor who examined Bobby, and he gave me an outline. He told me not to look at the pictures, but he gave me an outline of all his injuries. And all his injuries were in the chest and in the face. Back of him, no problem. His skull was still intact, but everything was blown off his face. He lost his arm and severe lacerations of his chest. So from what I talked to the doctor, Bobby died instantly.
The bottom elevator, the glass, just flames exploded out the front of the World Trade Center. Glass flew everywhere.
What happened was I was down in the basement. All of a sudden we heard a loud bang. And the elevator doors blew open. Some guy was burnt up. So I dragged him out. His skin was all hanging off. So I dragged him out and I pulled him out of the parking lot. This was what was left on it. Pulled him out. When I pulled him out, I looked up and the second bomb blew off.
Bobby walked into the lobby, or might not have even made it into the lobby, and there was a huge explosion. In an explosion, in a detonation, the air that shoots out from that explosion is supersonic. The gases shoot out in supersonic speed, and then the heat follows it. The 9/11 Commission hearings states that a fireball from the plane hitting from the 93rd up to the 98th floor, because the plane went in on an angle. The idea, again, the Commission saying that only a fireball created this damage. The fireball supposedly that came down does not have that energy. Remember, every window in the North Tower was blown out. You have an area of 208 feet by 208 feet. It's impossible that a fireball created that damage. So therefore, my thing with Bobby was that he was walking into the towers. There was a huge explosion. It killed him instantly, hit him in the face, hit him in the chest, obviously took off his arm, and that's how he died. And remember, the 9/11 Commission report refused to acknowledge the testimony they got from firemen, from policemen, from the EMS workers of these explosions that were taking place in the sub-basement. And both the 9/11 Commission report and NIST lied about that.